Mette Bjerknes, welcome to Hobby of a Lifestyle.
Thank you ever so much.
Well, thank you very much for coming on today. Mette, would you just like to tell listeners what your sport of choice is? What is the passion that you kind of pursue?
So my sport is I'm a powerboat racer.
Wow.
I race in the Formula 2 World Championship, and I'm one out of only 2 female drivers in the world.
Wow. What a stat. What a stat, and what an elite group of people to be
Yeah.
one of only 2 in the world. Okay, powerboating. So I was looking at powerboating when I realized you were going to come on the podcast, and 200 horsepower, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 5 seconds, and top speeds of 190 kilometers per hour, and G-force, which I don't totally understand, but 4.5 sounds pretty high. What an exhilarating feeling that must be.
It is. I mean, for me personally, it's the speed that gets to me.
Yeah.
Really is what thrills me. But of course, I mean, the G-force, we have more G-force in a powerboat than you do in a Formula 1 car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is incredible. I mean, yeah, we're 100% going to get into that. But if we go back to the beginning, because I don't even know how you begin to get into something like powerboating. So if we go back and kind of, where did you grow up and what were you into as a kid?
All right. So my parents, my mum is Danish, my father is Norwegian.
Right.
I was born and raised in Norway, and both my parents used to race powerboats.
Wow.
That's how they met.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So for me, there was no other option. I got into it quite late.
Right.
Most kids in Norway get into racing when they're about 10.
Okay.
I didn't get into it till I was 18.
Okay. What were you doing as a child in that kind of, although you were around it all your life with your parents being powerboat drivers or pilots, what were you doing that kept you away from the sport until you were 18?
I was actually doing target shooting, competition
Right.
target shooting.
Okay.
Yeah.
At a good level?
Yeah, at top level in Norway.
Wow.
I've always been drawn towards probably male-dominated sports.
I
I've
was
always
just going to say
found it,
danger.
yeah, danger. Yeah, no, I've always, like, typical girl sports have never been like horseback riding and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Not for me. I've tried
Just
it, but
shooting people and going really fast.
shooting people, yeah.
Or shooting targets, sorry, not people.
Yeah.
It makes it sound like you're an assassin, sniper. So you're talking about you getting into the powerboat later, but you're doing target shooting. How did you even get into that?
Well, both my granddad and my dad have been hunters,
Right.
so it's always been in the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So from an
were you kind of
early
rebelling?
age,
Were you
yeah,
rebelling against the powerboat driving and said, no, I'm going to go in the
I
other
think so,
direction?
because my dad bought me a boat when I was 13, but
Wow.
that boat just sat in the yard and never touched it. So yeah,
Right.
took me a
Okay.
good few years to get into it.
Yeah. I mean, where was the transition then? What was it at 18-year-old when you said, actually, I'm competing at the highest level in Norway for target shooting. Now I want to transition into powerboat racing?
I think my target shooting got to a point where it got too serious for me,
Okay.
and I didn't really want to do it anymore. And then I started helping. There's another female driver in Norway,
Right.
who quite close with, and I started helping her. And then standing on the bank watching her race just wasn't enough for me.
You start getting a
So
bug for it.
yeah, I borrowed a boat and had a go, and that was it.
Really? And was that the first
Yeah.
time you genuinely ever drove one?
Yeah, it
Wow.
was.
Wow. And was that kind of a moment for your parents where they just went, I knew it would happen. I knew
Yeah, yeah, for
it.
sure. My dad was like, Yes.
Yes. I mean,
And
did
it
your
didn't
parents
take long
compete
for
at the
him.
high level as well?
Sorry?
Did your parents compete at the high level?
My dad actually raced in Formula One.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's just always been there.
It had always been there. Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. Were you a natural?
Uh, in some respects, yes, I think so. Well, my dad's always been coaching me
Yeah.
from day one. And yeah, I've just taken it slow and steady at first because my dad, he was like above average keen, you would say. So I raced in the junior classes for 1 year before
Right.
he bought me a Formula 2 boat. And taking that step from the junior classes up to Formula 2, that's a huge, huge step.
Yeah.
And normally people race for years before they get to Formula 2.
Really.
Yeah. So,
Just,
I mean,
well,
you just have to have respect for what you do. And
yeah.
yeah, the powers behind you.
I mean, yeah, I'm looking at it's faster than a Lamborghini and a Mercedes going up to, is it 0 to 60? And the way it accelerates is
Yeah.
and on water as well. I kind of, it just, wow.
And it's from a dead engine.
Right. Okay. So you
So
literally
you
start the
turn
engine.
the key, you start, and it accelerates 0 to 60 in
And
4.5 seconds.
you talk about that jump from the juniors to the F2. What is the difference in speed?
But I mean, in the Formula 4 boat I was in for a few races, it would do maybe 60 miles per hour.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very big
It's a
jump,
big
isn't
step.
it? It's a very big jump.
Yeah.
As an 18-year-old who is competing at junior level for a year to go straight into the F2, how hard was that transition then going from a boat that does 60 mile an hour to a boat that does 100 miles per hour?
Big step. Big step. But I decided to not compete in the big competitions right away. I
Oh, yeah.
stayed local and just did it to learn and
Yeah.
to climb from there.
Is it one because he's obviously talking about your parents haven't done this and the fact that your father drove for F1 and then you've kind of dived headfirst into Formula 2. I You watch this as well. You see some of the horror story because that's the
Oh yeah.
racing's fantastic, but you see some of the horror stories. Kind of what's going through your head that first time you step into an F2 boat because there's going to be that temptation to go, yes, I want to hit it really fast. I want to test myself as well, but having to as you say, maintain that self-control. What is that? Can you remember the first time you got into the F2 boat?
I remember my first race, I do. And I was so terrified. Do you know what? It was horrible because you are the race. My first race was in a very tiny harbor,
Right.
and there was probably 12, 13 other boats there.
Right. Okay.
And do you know when you race in such a small area with so many boats around you,
Yeah.
going at that speed, it was terrifying.
I mean, how do you even see? I can just
You
imagine the
you
spray and
can't
the
see
waves.
much. No,
No.
no. You've got, I would say, maybe you've got 70% visibility.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is
So you got sprays, so you are reliant on your radio man. You got
okay.
people who
In
talk
the
to you.
It's
Yeah.
almost you should be able to almost do it blind because you put that much trust into the radio team.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. And
Mm.
radio man, I'm assuming on in the boat with you.
No, he's standing on shore
Okay.
watching.
I
Yeah.
mean some that's some role, isn't it? The trust that you
Oh
have to
yeah.
put into that. And is your father your radio man?
He used to be.
Yeah.
Now it's my partner.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna think it's got to be something that you 100% fully trust, hasn't it?
Oh yeah. And you want your radio man to be preferably an ex-racer,
Yeah.
someone who's been in the boat and done it before.
and understands it.
Yeah,
You know, you watch at the speeds, and I know was reading about it how they do the maneuver really well, the F2 boats, but
yeah,
still, you know, you're combating against waves and other pilots as well. How do you begin to sort of, is it just a case of you have to do it in order to train for it? And yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
a
yeah.
case of throw yourself in there. And have you had any kind of crashes, you know, when you first started out as well, when you're playing with it and getting to know the boat?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, some say that you have to crash to know where the limit is,
Yeah, yeah, I get
because
that.
we are flying on like a pocket of air,
Yeah,
and if you get it wrong, I mean, you flip, you barrel roll. It happens all the time. I mean, I don't think I've ever been to a race where a boat didn't flip
yeah,
or
yeah,
barrel roll or someone crashes. And it happens all the time.
yeah. What's that first one like?
Um, I've only flipped once,
Yeah,
knock on wood.
yeah, touch wood.
Yeah. I've done a few barrel rolls. I've had a few crashes, but I mean, I say to myself that when I crash with someone else, I say it like it happens all the time. It doesn't, but it's like I have to set my mark.
Yeah,
People think sometimes because I'm a girl that I will back off.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
because
and you're
maybe
not.
they think, oh yeah, well, she's not strong enough. She's not
Yeah,
capable of this, so she'll back off. Here I come. But I mean, I have to show them that no, I'm not going to back off.
no,
So
100%.
yeah,
100%. I think it's quite inspiring that there's females starting to, well, not starting to, that they're in the sport now, and they've broken into that, and they've changed perceptions. I'm a
yeah,
father of three little girls, so I think it's fantastic when I speak to inspiring ladies in the world
so
of
good.
sport or within world of
Yeah,
performance who actually do break down the stigma and break down those
yeah,
barriers and actually pave a way and give young girls and young ladies aspirations that maybe they didn't think were there.
I know. I think it's so fantastic, and you see it in Formula One cars now with the Formula One Academy.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah,
So
it's
good.
fantastic. And as you say, why shouldn't females be able to break into those spaces? Because yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a very physical sport, like for stamina,
yeah,
but as in terms of muscle mass, it doesn't affect the difference between men and women in
yeah.
motorsport isn't that big.
No,
We can do it the same.
of course,
Yeah,
of course,
yeah,
yeah. It's probably more a skill element.
yeah.
So
I
obviously,
would
don't
say
get me wrong,
so.
you need to have that stamina and endurance, but it'll be
Mm,
it's probably more mental fitness because
yeah,
the concentration
for
levels
sure.
must be kind of crazy for both you and the radio person
Mm,
to maintain that focus for the duration of a race,
yeah, yeah,
whilst taking in everything that's going on, because they say combating against so many different elements, spray, waves, other
yeah.
people, small areas.
But it is exactly as you say. I mean, after a race, doing 40 minutes of racing, it's intense, and you get out of the cockpit, and yes, of course, you're exhausted, but you're more mentally exhausted than you are
Yeah,
physically.
yeah, yeah, I can well imagine. And that's only from maybe going go-karting with friends and you're constantly
Yeah,
just trying to watch what you're doing. So I can't imagine kind of going 100 and something miles per hour and having everything else to combat against and to navigate.
yeah,
It's pretty impressive. Well, it's very impressive. Going from, you said you kind of built up those F2 races. First of all, you must have competed really well at the junior level to make that decision to step straight into F2.
yeah,
But
yeah. I mean,
national level?
I didn't really compete. Well, I did, but I only did the races to allow me to get into Formula
Yeah.
Two.
Okay.
So, um, I mean, my first year in Formula Two, I think I was fourth in the Scandinavian Cup.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah,
Wow.
it's all right.
Is what's it like going into a sport where you've come into it later in life, where you said like 8 years behind the rest of the
Yeah.
pack, if that's what you want to say, but having parents who've competed
Mm.
at such a level, and then having a father who's got that prestigious background of also being an F1 racer, Does it come in with an added pressure, or people almost looking at you and going, "Here's Meta, she's going to be fantastic," or actually, is she not going to be like her parents?
Yeah, I mean, there's added pressure, but I also think there's added judgment
Yeah,
because I took that climb much faster than other
yeah, of
drivers.
course.
So they will judge me for, oh, she hasn't got the experience to race Formula 2, for
Yeah,
sure. So you sort of have to prove your skills, but you also have to prove that you're safe enough to be there.
yeah. And how do you deal with that then? Because you talk about the kind of mental fortitude and the concentration levels that you need to race, but when it all of a sudden you feel that judgment and other people from the outside world are looking at you to say, well, is Meta going to be as good as her parents were?
Mm.
You know, or has she had a leg up because her parents have done this? Whatever people's stigmas may be,
Yeah.
what were your coping mechanisms to deal with that?
Do you know what? It has been difficult. It has taken me a good few years to sort of put that behind me.
Yeah,
I think I wasn't able to put it behind me until I actually showed people that I was good enough, and
yeah.
that took me a while. It did.
Earn that name and kind of earn respect in your own right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you mind if we kind of do just look into it a little bit? Because I think if there is young ladies or just anyone, young person who is coming at this and they're feeling the pressures from externally coming in,
Hmm.
not everything's plain sailing. You know, you're an F2 pilot now in the World Championships, you're one of two females. Even without your background, that is a massive achievement to get there on top of everything else that you've maybe had to deal with. So can we talk about some of the struggles and successes, you know, some of the key learning points throughout that journey?
Yeah. I mean, for me, my biggest struggle is it's difficult to touch because having my dad and my mother in my team has
Yeah.
actually sort of held me back a little bit.
Okay.
Uh,
And which way?
I think in a way that I wanted to please them and do what they wanted me to do, but they raced in the 80s when
Yeah.
things were a bit different. So I think, yes, I wanted to do it the way my dad did it, but
Yeah.
moving forward, I had to get a new team,
Yeah, of course.
which I have now,
Yeah.
and love my dad, love my mom, but it sort of held me back a little bit. And I think also having your parents around, they're a bit cautious of you. They know the
Yeah.
risk and
Yeah,
they
of
don't want
course.
you to get hurt.
Yeah.
So
And I
yeah,
suppose as sport evolves, it is hard when you've done something for so long and there's a certain
yeah,
way of doing things that actually and we're all victims of this. We're all guilty of doing it. We all get stuck in our ways a little bit and we stop
yeah,
learning. And unfortunately, when
yeah,
we stop learning, that is when things start to digress. So it's fantastic that you've noticed that as well. And the fact that your parents have, I mean, maybe that was a bit of a battle that you had with your parents to kind of let them let go of the reins a little bit. But the fact
yeah,
that you've managed to navigate that situation and give yourself a new team now, and it's obviously helped you escalate. I suppose all those trials and tribulations that you faced have allowed you to be one of only two female pilots in the world.
yes, yeah.
Um, Amazing. What at what point in your career then did you start going from Scandinavian Championship? I mean, to come fourth in your first
Mm.
Scandinavian Championships is a pretty impressive. Was that almost a real motivator for you and a almost a rubber stamp to say, actually, that's right, Meta, you belong here. This is the journey
Yeah,
you want to take.
yeah, I would say so. It didn't take me more than a couple of years, and I qualified for the World Championship.
Wow.
Yeah, so straight there. But my first couple of years, I took it easy because I didn't want people to think that, oh, I can't handle it, and she's only here because her parents
Yeah,
got her there. So yeah, it was a very steep learning curve, but yeah, I
can
think I
imagine.
did all right.
Yeah, I mean, to get a couple of years in it and to get to a World Championships, you talk about the Scandinavian Championships and coming fourth and then qualifying for a Worlds. And you also talked earlier about the step up from juniors to F2. What was the step up like from Scandinavia to World Championships? Because all of a sudden you're facing people from all over the globe.
Oh yeah, I mean, night and day, completely different. You think that for me, competing in Scandinavia against 8, 9, 10 other boats,
Yeah.
for me that was difficult. But getting into the World Championship where you got 20 boats around you,
Yeah.
oh, it was difficult, and it for me was sort of like starting from scratch again,
Yeah.
because it was just a completely different ball game.
Yeah, I can almost, I mean, which countries tend to dominate the world of F2?
A number of drivers, or
Just which area of the world are they usually from? Because you talk about the having the Scandinavian Cup. I mean, I'm sure it is big here in Britain as well. It's just I think it's not we're not necessarily exposed to as
no.
much.
I mean, powerboat racing is not a big sport if you compare it to, say, motocross
Yeah,
or Formula One cars, or so it's a very small branch of motorsport.
yeah,
But there's quite a few British drivers.
yeah.
We've got a few Swedish, Norwegian drivers, a lot of drivers from Italy.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
So
just,
the
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out kind of which countries seem to dominate the sport and who has the most access to it. Because you talk about some of the stuff there, and I'm almost thinking, wow, the price of an F2 boat must be ridiculously high. I've been very fortunate. I've had GT3, GT4 races on here. I've had even bobsleigh pilots, and
Oh
I know how
wow.
much it costs them to compete.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about, the costs incurred to one, even just buy a boat, but then two, kind of the maintenance and traveling that around the world for championships, around the country, even, you know,
Yeah.
what, let's put a ballpark figure on what it would cost for an F2 boat.
If you were to buy a brand new kit today, you would be looking at, I would say, 120, 30, maybe 40,000
Wow.
pounds.
Okay. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden you can start seeing that might be where,
Yeah.
though, yeah, those accessibility
Yeah.
options, it's,
But
yeah,
I mean, even in the World Championship, there are very few teams who can afford brand new kits. So
yeah.
most of the drivers have got used boats and older boats. Yeah,
Okay. And I suppose this is where you need a fantastic team of mechanics as well. They're coming to maintain that as well.
exactly. And people think, okay, yes, I buy a boat, I've got the engines, that's it. But running a team costs, I mean, you
Yeah.
wouldn't believe it, but
Well,
you
I
spend,
would. I
yeah,
think, you talk about us talking to the bobsleigh pilots, and they were talking it can take up anything cost $250,000 to compete and maintenance
yeah,
over a year.
yeah,
And it's a extortionate amount of money to think that people are competing
yeah,
in world championships. And, yes, at an elite level, it's funded, but I came from a sport that wasn't funded, so whenever I went away competing, I had to pay for myself. And I'm assuming that obviously the better you get at F2 powerboat racing and the more world championships, the fact that you're maybe one of two, only two females in the, maybe then sponsorship becomes a little bit easier to get. But we're in a very competitive world with so many different sports going on that
yeah.
actually it's probably quite a niche market, and you have to really appeal to somebody for to bring
Oh
in that
yeah,
sponsorship. And
yeah,
I love learning about this journey of it as well, talking about how that went from, I was very much competing in the F2 world to now I've got a full team behind me. You know, at the beginning you said it was very much your parents, and I'm sure the knowledge and the skill set that they have meant that you could have quite a restricted team.
yeah, yeah. I mean, today I've got 16 members
Wow.
traveling around Europe with me. We got a lorry that transports the boat.
Right.
Yeah, so that helps when we're in Europe. But then when we go overseas, like Middle East,
Yeah.
Asia, then we need to have a container.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
costs.
What does it cost then for you to compete over a year?
Uh, well, it's difficult to put a price on that because just going from races and hotels and costs like that, I would be all right with, say, 15,000 euros.
Yeah, of course.
But then you got crashes, you got to rebuild engines, all those things that you don't know will happen or not.
And
you have to take into account.
Do all of your team come from within the powerboat world? I mean, obviously mechanics are mechanics, but they must have specialized in that.
Yes.
Okay.
My partner who runs the team, he used to race.
Right.
And he's now my radio man, my team manager.
Right.
And I think all of my team, apart from one, has been in a boat, has raced the boat.
Wow. That's I suppose that's going to help massively. I just think it's amazing to, you know, how many young people out there who are maybe training or coming up and thinking about becoming a mechanic. I think you think mechanics and you think cars, you think lorries, and that's probably where I might be at. But actually, there's a world of opportunity out there. When it comes to boats, and it's phenomenal. It's and the fact that you've got a team of 6 people, I think clearly demonstrate there's a niche for it and a need for it as well. So it's fantastic for those people aspiring to be mechanics and maybe it's at an elite level sport as well.
For sure.
Right. So World Championships, when did you really start to find your feet in those? When did you feel, actually, this is where I belong? Because you said that first one was just a real eye-opener, the fact that you went from racing against 8 to 10 people to kind of 21, 23. And, you know, when you've maybe escaped that stigma that you are your parents' child.
Yeah. I think the turning point for me was probably 2-3 years ago. Wow, and I've been racing for good over 10 years in the World Championship now. So it's only just recent that it's sort of been turning for me. But I think that I've now got a very stable team behind me, and that helps my mentality when I'm at races, knowing that before I've had to do a lot of the work myself. Now I can just sit back and focus on my job, which is racing. And I know that my team will do everything, and everything will be prepared top notch at every race. So that helps my mentality.
And do you think that because of the longevity that you've had in the sport now, and because of the next generation coming out, that not that past competitors are forgot about, but actually because there's a new breed of competitor and there's a current elite class, that actually you are now Mette Bjerknes of your own right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
And is that, you know, you talk that's only the last 2 or 3 years having a stable team, but is that also kind of freed your mind to be able to almost release the shackles a little bit and say, well, actually, I've earned this place now. I've not that you had anything to prove, but you've proved to everybody that you are your own person and you are your own athlete.
Yeah, I mean, the last few years, I've had a very stable result every year. I've been in the top 10 in the world for the last 3 years. And I think I've sort of made my mark and sort of showed people that I actually belong here. I'm not just here because my parents.
Yeah, of course. And like I say, I don't mean to keep going back to your parents, but it's because I just think because of where you've came from, it's really interesting to highlight the journey that you've been on and actually say, well, the fact that you've said that over the last 3 years, the kind of shackles have been released, and now you're consistently top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
What is the reaction like of a male-dominated sport? And so when you're coming in the top 10, and all of a sudden, you know, you've got maybe that the traditional values that people look at and go, oh my goodness, there's a female now in the top 10. What's the reaction like? But also kind of, what's your reaction to it?
Most reactions are very positive. I mean, I was prepared to meet stigma to meet negativity. I mean, I compete against Arabs. I
Right.
compete against all different sorts of cultures,
Yeah.
but it's been mostly positive.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do meet people who have negative views on women in motorsport, but
Yeah.
that's how it is. But it's always fun, and people are cheering me on when I do well, and I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I think, especially, even last week being International Women's Day, and that
Yeah.
I do feel that the world has changed for the best as well, and actually it's a
Yeah.
lot more accepting now. And
Oh yeah.
the fact that you must read, do you ever get a chance to really reflect on that? And I'm sat here with a smile on my face listening to it, thinking this is fantastic. As I said, having three little girls and knowing what they can aspire to be, I'm sat here, I am genuinely pleased that it's been accepted now. Do you ever get a chance to reflect and just go, wow, you've got your parents' generation before you, where your mother used to compete and other females competed, but actually being one of only two females in the world championships really sets you as a pioneer for the sport as well. And what's that going to look like in another 10, 20 years time, when it could be an even split of female male athletes?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. Apart from racing, I'm also a trained teacher, and I've been working as a teacher for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love seeing the girls in my classroom getting excited when I talk about me being one out of two female drivers in the
Yeah.
world. And I mean, I love being able to inspire girls.
Yeah,
Mm.
100%. I mean, it's a shame it's a sport you can't teach at school.
I know, I know.
But do you ever bring it in? Do you ever bring the boat into the school so the kids can see it?
Yeah. I've shown it on the big screen many times in my
I
classrooms.
mean, it's a shame you can't take it into the school for them to have a look at.
Yeah,
I
it
mean, the
is.
reaction would be fantastic. Or take them on a field trip so they can maybe watch you down at practice. And where do
Yeah.
you practice in the UK? Because, I think about some of the lakes, or some of the areas around here, and, you probably gotta have a decent body of water to be able to do that.
You need a big lake, you
Yeah.
do, and you need a minimum depth of 4 meters.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we've got a few places. We practice at a lake called Stewartby, Bedford.
Right.
We also practice up at Carmel, not far from Manchester, up
Right.
at St. Helens.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are a few places where we practice, but I mean,
Right.
practice is practice. You can test propellers, you can do this, you can do that,
Yeah.
but the practice you get in a race.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there many races that happen in the UK? I'm just thinking about bodies of water and actually where you're seeing your train and whatnot.
Yeah, we do have a few races. I do race nationally as well.
Yeah.
So when I'm not off competing in the World Championship, I do as many races in the UK as I can.
Wow. That's fantastic. So you talked about the last 10 years, and the last three specifically, you've kind of broken into the top 10 of world championships. What are the aspirations? What are the drivers behind motivating you to continue the race?
Well, I am getting older, and I mean, new drivers are coming in, and they are really good. So
Yeah.
I'm saying to myself, I'm going to do this for as long as it's fun, and
Yeah.
it's still so much fun for me. And I mean, improving every year,
Yeah.
especially the last 3 years, is just such a drive for me,
I
such
can
a
imagine.
motivator.
I can
Yeah.
imagine. Top five, do you kind of look at it year on year and go, well, okay, last year I was in the top 10, I was maybe in the top 8. This year we're looking for the top 5.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah, how
Last
close do
year,
you think? How close are you? Do you think to sort of breaking into that podium at the top 3?
I am close. I am
Yeah.
getting closer. Last year, we had 4 races in the World Championship. The first 3 races, I came sixth in all 3.
Right.
So if I had finished the last race in sixth or better, I would have been seventh total.
Right. Wow.
But
Okay.
then I crashed, and
But I can imagine it's fine margins, and yeah,
oh,
I'm
it
talking
is.
probably milliseconds rather than seconds.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah. But I mean, just being in top 6, which means you go to Parc Fermé after the race,
Right.
it's just such a good feeling, having
Yeah.
been at the bottom of the grid in
Yeah, of
every
course.
race prior to that. So now
Wow.
being stable at that level feels
Yeah.
so good. And of course, I'm aiming for the podium. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And you talk about it being kind of really small marginal gains that you're looking to make. What is it that you have to do then? Is it sometimes just down to the conditions of the day? Is it actually some, because I don't want to say technique, because I imagine it's maybe there is some technique to it, but I think it's probably more the, yeah, I'm not really sure what the word would be. We can use technique, or is it something that your radio man needs to do something slightly different? You know, how do you work on those marginal gains?
Yeah. For me, I don't think it's technique. I think my technique, I think I got the technique. For
Yeah.
me, it's the mental part.
Okay.
I struggle a lot in qualifying
Right.
to get the good lap I need in qualifying, and that's something I have to work on. And I know that's what we have to do this year: just work on qualifying and get that good clean lap in.
Yeah. And what is it about the qualifying where you feel that there's that sort of small mental barrier?
The mental barrier for me is that it's not, I get a push when there's someone chasing me from behind, or
Right.
I'm chasing someone, and you
Okay.
don't do that in qualifying. It's just you against yourself.
Okay.
So I don't feel like I get that push, and I need to
Right.
find that inner push.
Okay. That's really interesting. Really interesting. So what kind of things are you putting in place then?
Well, we just need to find different ways for me to find that inner
Yeah.
motivation. Yeah.
Wow.
And find
No,
that
that's
clean
fantastic.
lap, because I've never really had, well, I've had my dad
Yeah.
and I've had people around me coaching me, but I've never really had someone who's coached me into finding that clean lap. Do you know what I
Yeah, of
mean?
course. Of course.
It's difficult when there's 20 boats on the same
Yeah,
circuit,
yeah.
all trying to get a clean lap.
Oh, it's fantastic. And you know, you've talked about the aspirations there to break the podium over the next couple of years. What would your one piece of advice be if you were going to give? So, and it can be within the sport, it can be within life, but it's something that we always ask at the end of the podcast: is what would your one piece of advice be to somebody?
To get into the sport, or to
The
just,
sport or life in general, just you know, you've obviously worked really hard to get where you are now. What would your
yeah,
one piece of advice be?
I think just take every chance you get, because everything you say no to is a missed opportunity. So
Love it.
just go for it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Mette, thank you so much for coming on Hobby of a Lifestyle. It's been an absolute pleasure
Thank
learning
you
about your journey and learning
ever
more
so
about
much,
F2
Andy.
Powerboat. No, thank you so much.